Well, a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
A lot to talk about today. Big movie opening in theaters, already open in theaters, called Avengers Infinity War. It's not.
Never heard of it.
It's not a Avengers Infinity War. It's not the Avengers Infinity Wars.
Or Avengers the Infinity War.
No, it's just, what's it called?
Avengers Infinity War.
Avengers Infinity War.
Yes.
Not wars, but
Not
war.
wars, yes.
Okay, and it's not part one.
Are we talking about the one movie or multiple?
One movie.
I'm confused now.
Well, it is.
Avengers
Well,
Infinity War.
yeah. Now, it was going to be Infinity War Part
1.
But they decided not to do that, even though it is a Part 1.
Yeah, and I was reading an interview that they literally changed nothing about the movie layout. It's set up exactly the same way, the scripts, the story, nothing changed, but they felt that from a studio and marketing perspective, it was a bad move to label it Part 1 and
Right.
Part 2. So now it's just Infinity War, and who knows what they'll call the next one.
It didn't hurt Harry Potter.
No,
in
it
those
didn't.
last
It actually didn't, and it
films.
wouldn't have hurt this one either.
No.
I think, but it does give you a chance to have some other marketing instead of having a Part 1 and a Part 2. But anyway, the movie itself, just to give you, before we came in, I did a little bit of research leading up to this this review. 2008, May of 2008, so 10 years ago was the launch of the MC universe, so the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Iron Man. That launched this all. They had hopes that there was going to be this incredible success and you'd have this run of films, but they didn't know. You never know until it happens. But
Right.
the movie was made for $145 million, ended up worldwide take $545 million and some change. And so, yeah, it was like, okay, we're going to do more of these. And what I've loved about these, within 10 years, we've had 19 films
Wow.
that are part of this universe that are all connected in one way or another. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible in 10 years to have had that. And it really does make you feel like, you know, in this age of television where you've got some really good TV, it feels like episodic TV in some ways to me.
Yeah, it does. And you know, you said 19 films?
19 films so far.
I
counting this
can't,
one.
yeah, I can't think of any that have tanked. Have there
No,
been any?
no, they've all been successful.
Yeah, and even critically successful,
Yep.
I think, for the most part.
Yeah, so 19 films, 5 more that are scheduled in the next 3 years, including one more this year, this summer, with Ant-Man and the Wasp. And that's the only film, you haven't seen Ant-Man.
I've
is
not
the
seen
only
Ant-Man,
one in
so
this that you have not seen.
I'm on
I
18 out
thoroughly
of
enjoyed
19.
Ant-Man.
Yeah,
I like
I
Paul
loved it.
Rudd a lot anyway, and he's perfect in that, and it was a fun movie.
Yeah, Ant-Man was my favorite comedy of that year when it was released. But money take out of these 18 films so far, earned total $15 billion.
15 billion?
Billion. 15
I would have thought
billion.
more, frankly.
Yeah. Well,
with
and
19
that may
films.
be the net.
Yeah.
That may be the net,
Yeah,
but
maybe,
still,
yeah.
that's how much they've earned.
Yeah.
The box
You know,
office.
DC could learn a thing or two.
Yeah,
from
they
Marvel.
could, and we spent some time talking about this. But this movie, let me say, if you haven't seen some of these other films, don't go into this one. You've got to have some background knowledge. And before the show ends today, we're going to talk about 7 films that you must or should see before watching Infinity War. Dive into your thoughts. Give us a little background on the story, and then we'll share how we feel about this movie.
So yeah, Infinity War is kind of the long haul that Marvel's been pushing towards, and it's about the Avengers uniting to battle their most powerful enemy yet, who is Thanos. We saw him first introduced in 2012 as a post-credit scene, and they've slowly kind of been building up to him. So we finally get him as this big villain, and he plans to collect all 6 of these objects called Infinity Stones that we've slowly seen throughout the movies, and use them to put it on this gauntlet that he wears, and it allows him to harness the power of the universe, basically. And so everything's really uncertain, and the Avengers, you know, continue to fight for this, and really everything they fought for up until this moment has been leading up to this.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool, is keeping up with that episodic description that you mentioned. Is this very much feels like a series finale in a giant TV show, because everything's been leading up to this.
Yeah, it almost felt like this was almost kind of that mid-season finale, because we got one more film that will wrap up this particular storyline, but it has all connected, and the threads throughout these 18 films that have had to work. I mean, talk about continuity, talk about, you know, script supervision to find ways to have those things connected throughout and to make sense. I mean, that's the long haul. I mean, for 10 years, that's been the long haul for this.
Yeah, and yeah, continuity. And the more I thought about this after we watched the premiere last night, I'm just thoroughly impressed by the writing in this script, because whether or not you feel like it's overcrowded, each time any character gets a line of dialogue, any special part in the film, it truly feels like it's that character's identity. Every time Thor appears, it feels like he's just stepped straight out of Thor Ragnarok.
Yep.
Every time Doctor Strange appears, it feels like he's out of his movie. Guardians, the same way. And I'm thoroughly impressed that scriptwriters could take characters from 18 prior films
Right.
and make it feel like they're authentically living in this one film.
Yeah,
And-
it felt fluid. I do think there were just a few times with this many superheroes, it was overcrowded just a few
Yeah.
times. But they did a nice job not trying to show all of them get screen time at the same time.
I would think it'd be really easy to overstuff a film like
You know,
this.
and I have watched some superhero films where I felt that was the case. I think back to Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
I felt it was kind of overkill and they tried to do too much. Even felt in Justice League there were some issues with that. This, I didn't feel it was overcrowded. I mean, there were times that they're trying to do a lot. Very ambitious. I think that was my son's approach. Thomas said this is probably the most ambitious film he's ever seen.
I agree.
And with all they were trying to do, yeah, I'm right there with him on that.
Yeah, and I think that one of the keys to success is you always get these pocket stories where you have pockets of heroes. And you certainly do get those big payoff shots where you have all these characters fighting on screen, but it's much more focused on these pockets of little
Yep.
team-ups from within the Avengers and how 2 or 3 or 4 characters interact with each other versus how 20 all interact
Exactly.
at the same
Yeah,
time.
and that's what worked. That's what really worked because you had these different scenes of things happening with, as you said, pockets with just a handful of them working out a solution here,
More
working out
intimate
a solution
scenes.
here.
More intimate scenes.
Yeah, and that really made this connect. for
Yeah,
me.
and I think it's one of Marvel's more emotional films. I laughed a ton. There were some really emotional, sad parts, some really jaw-dropping moments, and I finally felt like we had a Marvel film with real stakes on the line.
Yeah, nobody was safe.
Yeah.
Nobody was safe.
Someone died?
whatsoever. Yeah, there are some deaths
There are
in this
deaths
film.
in
yeah.
there, and
Among
pretty
some of
shocking
the
ones at that, I would
primary
say.
characters?
Don't want,
Yeah, all right.
Well,
I don't
yeah.
want to give anything away,
You know, but yeah, there's some main
characters that you would
characters.
not expect to see go get some pretty interesting endings.
Yeah.
And it's just finally nice to see, and I hope they don't go back on that in the next one because, you know, one of my biggest criticisms of Marvel, their universe as a whole, has just always been that it always felt too safe. You know, a character dies at the end of one film, like, okay, well, you know, at the
bring him
beginning of
back.
the next one, yeah, bring him back. Even Star Trek, you know,
Yeah.
Spock comes back after
Now,
he
wait a
died
minute.
in
Let's
the
not
second one.
badmouth Star Trek Wrath of Khan.
No, but you know, I mean, what you're saying is
Yeah.
you don't feel like,
Yeah.
okay, you kill
How
somebody
many
off. we're gonna
superheroes
bring
have we
him back.
lost in the last 18 Marvel movies? You know,
Yeah,
That-
Yeah.
I can't think of any off the top of my
Yeah.
head, and so it was nice just to finally feel like, even if characters weren't dying, to feel like, well, gosh, I never know if they will or not.
Right.
It finally felt real.
yeah, and you've also got this movie. We've talked about this. The movie is less about the Avengers and it's more about the story of Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
It's his story, and even as this one wraps up, it does wrap up on a cliffhanger to an extent. I mean, it actually fulfills the story up to this point, but it does leave you, with, okay, what's next? And as the credits roll, it says Thanos will return. I mean, that's how the movie ends. I'm not giving a lot away there.
No.
I mean, because this is part one, and we all know this is part one of the greater epic.
But yeah, if you do view it as Thanos' story, it kind of does come to a nice wrap at the end of this film, and it certainly won't feel like that for us since we're rooting
Yeah.
for the heroes, but
Right.
since they focus so much time on making him the main character, his story arc really feels like it comes to a nice point at the end of the
And you
film.
really get to understand his motivation, and while you may not agree with it, you can understand it, and I think that's an interesting thing, and that's a tough thing to do sometimes
Yeah.
with villains. I did have, there was one particular scene that I didn't buy something that was going on with him, but I kind of put that aside. Overall, I think this is a solid film. The effects, of course, solid. It's one of these films you need to see on the big screen. But you do need to see a few other films first if this is your first approach to going to the Avengers. The music, this guy's been busy with doing
Yeah,
the music
Alan
for this.
Silvestri, he just finished
Really?
up Ready Player One, and now he's back for Infinity War. It was some really nice old school scoring, and he used his themes from the Avengers, even got a nice nod to the Black Panther theme in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But some really old school, like even before John Williams' time, very like old-timey filmmaking
Yeah.
score, and I really enjoyed getting to hear that.
A lot of action, a lot of story, a lot of characters. The movie was shot partially in Georgia and in New Zealand. Some beautiful landscapes in this, and it's just an epic film.
Yeah,
Other thoughts?
that's about it for me. I gave it a B+.
Okay. I gave it an actually incomplete.
What?
I gave it an incomplete because this is truly part one, but I got called on it by one of my former students who said, you got to give some grade because it is a movie.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
I'm giving it a B. I'm reserving the rights to either move that up or down depending on what happens in the next film that finishes this.
Well, you know,
Did
if a
they shoot
student
them
takes
back
your
to back?
class, if a student takes your class and stops halfway through, then he gets an incomplete
That's
on his
exactly
report
right.
card. So, like, I mean, I think it's fair that you're able to give that.
Yeah.
Did they shoot them back to back?
Yeah, I think they did on this
I
one.
think
So the
yeah.
other one's going to be coming sooner than maybe
Well, it's a
normally
year
would?
away.
Yeah, May
It's a year
3rd
away.
or
Next year.
4th.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Still got to wait a year.
Yeah.
All right.
So there you go. That's our take on Avengers: Infinity War. Before the break.